So again, welcome to this Wednesday webinar. I've pinned a link right in top of the chat. So in case you want to participate in this webinar in a different language, we have the option now that you can select a language of your choice, and then you have to fiddle a little bit with your screen, because then you can see the translated captions while I'm speaking. So please try that. It is something new that we try, also to allow people who are, well, for whom English might not be their preferred language, to use that to listen to the webinar or to read the webinar in a different language. So today we're going to talk about data analytics and KPIs for vehicle sharing and vehicle pooling. Now, for those of you who have been in the Fleet Forum webinars over the last year, this might be a very, very familiar image for you. Because this is what we call the commitments, the Fleet Forum commitments, to which many of your organizations who are member with Fleet Forum has signed up to. And what do we want to do with these commitments? Now, for most organizations, environmental sustainability is a high priority, right? And we all know that our fleets do have a great impact on the number of emissions, or the height of the emission, or the volume of the emissions. So last year, together with our member organizations, what we have done is we have developed commitments where we have said, like, okay, we want to set a baseline. So we want to know, as member organizations, where we are in terms of our emissions. So first we want to know how many emissions we have. Then we want to set targets, and that is a commitment that many organizations have signed up to. But then also we wanted to, of course, make that more concrete, because it's one thing to know, okay, well, we have these emissions, but then also we want to have concrete actions that we can do something about that. And one of the commitments that organizations have signed is that within 3 years, organizations are participating in vehicle sharing initiatives in at least 20% of the operating countries. And that is what we are going to do today. We're going to talk about how you can then sort of measure in your vehicle sharing initiatives, how you can measure the outcome and whether you are going on the right track. Because let's say by 2026, we want to be able to say, well, we are participating in 20% of the operating countries where we are, that we are sharing our vehicles either internally, but we would prefer as Fleet Forum that you also look beyond that and that you also start vehicle sharing outside of your organization. Now, before we go there, I see that many of you try to set the language in teams. That's not what you should do, because then you change the language for everyone. So if you want to read what I'm saying in a different language, you have to go to the top of the chat. There is a link there. You click on that link, and then you can select your the language you prefer. But then you have to sort of reduce this screen, and then you have to place the other screen next to the webinar screen. So that is the thing. So please don't change the language in Teams itself. Okay, maybe a question for you, and you were all very active in the chat already, saying like, yeah, you're loud and clear. I just want to take stock of how many of you are participating in vehicle sharing or vehicle pooling initiatives. And vehicle sharing, what we mean with that is where we are, let's say, my organization shares the vehicles together with another organization. So that means that if I don't have enough vehicles today, then I can sort of borrow those vehicles from another organization. And vehicle pooling, that is mostly what we mean with, let's say, ride sharing or trip sharing, where we say, okay, now let's see if we go to the same destination at the same time, and can we then share the vehicles or share the trip together. So how many? I see Jamie is saying no, sorry. How many of you? Please use the chat, people, to make it a little bit interactive for me. Not yet. Okay, thanks, Simon. Not yet. We do trip sharing in my degree. That's cool. DRC Ukraine, no sharing. Nope. Okay. Okay. Very minimal. Timothy, we do not. Okay, not yet. Rarely. Not yet in South Sudan. Oh, well, it seems like I have a group of, of participants for whom vehicle sharing or ride sharing is very new, right? Minimal. Okay, well, maybe then to start with, well, maybe the most important message of this webinar is that vehicle sharing or every action that you can do to reduce the kilometers that your organization drive, that is the best for your organization. You might have heard us saying before, like the cleanest kilometer is the kilometer that you don't drive. And of course, the more that you can pull and the more that you can use the same vehicle for the same trip for multiple people, the better it is, because that has a huge impact on your emissions. So for all of you who are saying not yet, not yet, not yet, or minimal, my suggestion is that you go look into your organization if it is possible. And I think for every organization, it is possible. Maybe not all of your trips, but look for the ones where you have the what we call the low-hanging fruits. So, for example, in many organizations or in many locations, we all take the same plane to go to somewhere, right? And these planes, they are always leaving at the same time. So these are excellent opportunities to look into to see if you can start doing some vehicle pooling, ride sharing, but also if you are working in consortia, and I know that many of your organizations are doing that, where you work together with other organizations to provide services to the people you serve. Also there, I would really encourage you to make vehicle sharing, vehicle pooling there the standard, because it doesn't make sense to go to go in one big convoy to the same location, right? So that would be my sort of my first takeaway. But today, what we really want to also address is then, okay, well, if you want to do that, then what is the role of your data analytics in humanitarian vehicle sharing initiatives? And I think what is good about looking into your data analysis or doing looking into your data analytics is that it really empowers your organization to optimize your vehicle sharing and ride sharing initiatives or activities. Um, it also helps you to ensure that your resources are used efficiently. It gives you insight in, okay, how many people are going to a destination at the same time, and it ensures that your transport needs are met, right? The other one, the other very, very critical role, and I didn't put it on the slide, but it triggered a thought in my mind when many of you were saying like, oh, we are still discussing, or we have not made it part and parcel of our operating model in how we manage our fleet. Data analytics also helps you to build your business case, to show your country management or to show your program, your passengers, like, guys, this is the right thing to do if we are serious about reducing our emissions. So that's where data analytics plays an important role. Now, of course, when you start looking into vehicle sharing or vehicle pooling or trip sharing initiatives, then you need to select your KPIs, right? And you need to select your KPIs because those are your tools to measure your success or failure, and those allow you also to make adjustments, to step in if things are not going the right way, and it is really a good tool to align your organizational goal Also with your customer expectations, right? If your passengers are now used to the fact that they always have their own vehicle that they can use to go somewhere, and now all of a sudden they have to change, and now all of a sudden they have to share, or your staff is used to always drive a vehicle from your organization, and now they are sort of in a vehicle of another organization. That is also what you need to manage, and that's where KPIs are really, really helpful. So I I put on I wanted to give you some inspiration on what type of KPIs you could use. And of course, the first one that we come with is the vehicle utilization rate, because that gives you really a good information about your fleet size, your profile, and your distribution, right? And it really gives you insight on the question like, how often are my vehicles in use and how often are they idle? Another one that you can use, and these first two might not come as a big surprise, maybe the first three, uh, are the trip frequency and duration, because that really gives you insight in the demand of your customers, your passengers, and your fleet availability. So it really can help you to say, okay, well, we see that on this day we have a lot of demand going in that direction. Maybe we can combine that, and maybe we can also combine that with other organizations. And it helps you to identify the routes that you can use for vehicle sharing or ride sharing. But it also helps you to see, okay, where do I have these peak moments where I might not need to rent a vehicle or buy a vehicle, but where can I then reach out to my sister organization or my peer organization to see, okay, do they have downtime for the vehicles at that moment, and can we start sharing the vehicles together? Um, Maintenance and downtime, that is also an important one, because that helps you to predict the impact uh, of your downtime on service availability and customer satisfaction, right? So I think those first three, those are sort of the ones that you probably already measure, maybe for a different reason, but these are important also if you look into vehicle sharing and vehicle pooling initiatives. Now, the fourth one, which we call the Net Promoter Score, is a KPI that helps you to identify the areas for improvement in customer experience. And the reason why this one is important is because whenever you go into a vehicle sharing or vehicle pooling initiative, it does mean that your passengers need to change. They need to change how they order a vehicle. They need to change how they plan their trips. They need to change how they are in the vehicle. And of course, you want to know if they are happy with that, right? So a good question to ask, or a good question to want to have answered, is to what extent would your passengers recommend your service to others? Because that gives you an idea of, okay, well, they are happy. Yes, they had to make the change, but they are happy, or yes, they had to make the change, they are not happy, but I can now identify areas where I can improve their experience. Some other ones are which are mainly interesting if you are doing ride sharing initiatives, is really the trip completion rate. So what percentage of the requested trips have you successfully completed? And that is, of course, within a certain time span, um, uh, uh, and where the vehicle that you provide is the most suitable vehicle for that trip, right? So what I mean with that is, and that goes also to the second one on the slide, is yes, if I request a trip, but I have to wait 2 hours before there is a vehicle, then your trip completion rate might still be high, but my average wait time is not so good. So average wait time might also be good. Um, to measure. And especially for those of you who are using a system where passengers can book while they are en route, like you nowadays see more also in a commercial setting, or maybe for your personal trips where you book via an app, then how long do you need to wait? But I believe that more and more, when these initiatives are picking up, that these kind of indicators are also important because it shows something about the reliability in the service that you are provided. Then for people who are interested in finances, because the beauty of a lot of these environmental actions is also that it has a positive impact on your costs, is the cost per passenger kilometer. And that is really where what you want to measure when you are embarking on vehicle or trip sharing, ride sharing initiatives. Because, of course, the more passengers you have in your vehicles, the lower your costs in your total costs remain the same, but your cost per passenger kilometer goes down. And then the other one is, of course, the CO2 emission. And I would also recommend there, maybe now you are measuring the CO2 emission per kilometer, but maybe in the near future, you also want to sort of take one step up and then start measuring the emissions per passenger kilometer. So that is sort of an inspiration on the KPIs. Now, how do we then move into the data analysis process? Now, maybe as a reminder, when we talk about data analysis processes, first, of course, we want to define the question. What is the question that we want to have answered? Then, important step is to collect the data. Maybe even more important is to clean the data. So to make sure that you take out all the data entry mistakes, the outliers, and then, of course, analyze the data and visualize and share your findings. Now, when we talk about vehicle sharing potential, we would like to analyze the data on the predictive, in the predictive stage. So what you see here on the slide is different stages of how we can do data analytics, right? So we have the descriptive analytics. That is what we really look at. Okay, what happened? For example, my vehicle drove 1,000 kilometers. That's what it did, right? I mean, it's not really analytics. It's just like, okay, it drove 1,000 kilometers. Then diagnostic data is why did it happen? And that's what we often see, for example, when we are looking into road safety incidents, where we are looking, okay, why did it happen? That is really a diagnostic. We look at the data, we diagnose, and then come up with reasons. Now, the part that I would like to encourage you to look into is with predictive data is to look more in what will happen. And the reason why I'm saying that is also because more and more organizations are making use of artificial intelligence or with system, sort of the systems are predicting what we are doing right now, right? So, and that is also what you can use in your analytics. So, for example, you can look at your historical data on how the vehicles are used, but also on weather conditions and maybe also on crisis events in your country of operations to forecast your future demand for transport. For example, if you are working in a let me see. If you are working in a capital city and you know that every Friday evening everybody wants to go home at a certain time, then you would know. What the transport demand, what that will do. Sorry, what that will do on your waiting times, right? So that is more on the predictive one. And then, of course, you can also look at okay, then how can we minimize the impact of those traffic jams on the duration of our trips. So then you can look at, okay, what are the most efficient routes for these trips at that time, right? So that is sort of the predictive analytics, and um, that is what we would like to encourage you to look into, because it is the next step in understanding your fleet. It's understanding the transport service that you are offering, and that will help you also to every time improve the fleet services for your organization or in your organization. So once you are starting to look into sort of more the predictive analytics, then what is important is to visualize that. And what we would recommend is that you visualize that in a dashboard, because nobody likes to go through spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets of Excel, trying to figure out what the status is of your fleet, right? So, and also because you, as the fleet manager or the person responsible for the fleet, you also want to tell a story with your data. And dashboards are good because also for non-fleeties, maybe being your country director or your program staff, or well, anybody else whose prime responsibility is not in fleet management, it helps them to understand the performance in very easily. And what you see on the sheet here is that with colors, you can tell that story with graphs, and that makes it easy for people to understand, but it supports decision making in your organization. So, the main messages of today is, whenever you start looking into vehicle sharing initiatives, select the KPIs, the key performance indicators, that give you insight in the performance of those vehicle sharing initiatives. So if you start, then really think like, okay, if I start this project or if I start this initiative, what questions do I have that I want to have answers to? And then choose the KPIs based on that. Then use predictive analytics to anticipate what will happen. So really use your historical data, but also use your proactive data, so to say, to see what will happen. And then the next step is, okay, how can we make it happen? And visualize your results to tell your story, to support decision making, and to also demonstrate how your service is helping the organization to reduce emissions. And then don't forget that the cleanest kilometer is the kilometer not driven. So the more that you can share, the more that you can make use of the same vehicle with more passengers, the more you can maybe switch by using minibuses with multiple organizations, for example, to airports or to meetings where everybody goes to, the better it is for the environment. Okay. We have a couple more minutes. Uh, do we have, I see a question. Sorry, Pascal, what is the meaning of KPI? And thanks, Bo, for answering that one. It is indeed key performance indicator, and that is it's a metric that you use to look at, okay, is my fleet doing is my fleet performing well? Am I providing a good service to the organization? So that is key performance indicator. Uh, Let me see, Simon, you mentioned utilization, including passengers per kilometer, aside from uh, utilization stats. I think utilization stats for vehicle sharing, or let's say ride sharing, there you would really look at the passengers, because of course the more passengers you have in the vehicle, the better insight, or that metric really gives you insight if you are sharing trips or sharing. If you look into vehicle pooling initiatives, uh, that is where you then would look at, okay, so how often are my vehicles used? and how often are they idle. And that's if you see like, okay, well, my vehicles are idle for, well, under, let's say, I would say 85, 80%, then I would really look at right sizing the fleet and right profiling the fleet, because that might be that your fleet is either oversized or that you might not have the right vehicles. Um, Let me see. KPI and utility rate analysis, how average would be perfect state of usage, or are there any benchmark regarding with this? Thanks for the question. So as we speak, Fleet Forum is doing a big data analysis exercise. Uh, from the benchmark that we have sent out to our member organizations. And in there, we are also looking into utilization of the fleet. Now, what the current utilization, let's say, benchmark is that in order for your vehicle to be most cost efficient, is that it should drive every year between 25,000 and 30,000 kilometers. And I know from last year's analysis or from last year's benchmark that that is not the case for many of our organizations. But once we are done with the analysis of the benchmark, then we will share sort of the generic results, so then you can use it as your benchmark. Let me see. Yes, we will, Moses. Yes, we can share. We can share the KPIs, definitely. And I saw, before we close off, I saw a lot of you mentioning like, oh, we do not share vehicles, or we're not engaged in vehicle sharing initiatives at the moment. We do have a starter kit, so I will share the link to that starter kit in the email that you receive, also with the link of the recording. It is 12:30. We're gonna close off. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. Just send me an email, and then I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for your patience while we were fiddling with the audio settings. Bye bye. See you next time.